You see the message, you read it, you even think about replying, and then you don't. Not because you forgot, not because you don't care, but because something simple no longer feels simple. You tell yourself you'll respond later, when you have more time, when you can think clearly, when you know exactly what to say. But later doesn't come the way you expect. And the longer you wait, the heavier it starts to feel. Not because the message changed, but because now responding feels like something you have to get right. Most people would call this avoidance or overthinking. But that's not always what's happening, because the hesitation doesn't come from not wanting to respond. It comes from what responding might create. When you read a message, you don't just read the words. You notice the tone, the context, what might be behind it. You start thinking about how your response will land, how it might be interpreted, what it might lead to next. And that's where things begin to shift, because now you're no longer just replying, you're anticipating. You don't just answer, you prepare. You run through different versions in your mind, different tones, different ways of saying the same thing, trying to find the version that won't create friction, that won't be misunderstood, that won't open something you don't want to deal with. And the more you try to get it right, the more pressure builds around something that used to be effortless. Because now you're not just replying, you're managing perception. You're thinking about how this will be received, how it will be interpreted, what it might trigger next. And that adds weight to something that was never meant to carry that much. And once that weight is there, it changes how you relate to the message entirely. So instead of sending something simple, you pause, you wait, you delay, not as a conscious decision, but as a response to that wait. And over time, that pause becomes familiar, almost automatic. And it doesn't stay limited to messages. It shows up in conversations, in decisions, in small moments where a response is expected. You slow down, you step back, you hold your response for a moment longer than most people would, not to avoid, but to make sure nothing goes wrong. At some point, responding stopped being simple. It became something you had to think through, to adjust, to filter, to get right. You learned to consider before speaking, to anticipate before answering, to read the situation before entering it. And that stayed with you. So now, even small interactions pass through a filter, a quiet process that asks, will this be understood the right way? Could this create something I don't want? Is this going to lead to something I'll have to manage? And while that process is running, you hesitate. And the longer you hesitate, the more the message changes, not in what it says, but in what it represents. Now it's not just a reply. It's something delayed, something noticed, something that might need explaining. And suddenly, it feels heavier than it did in the beginning. So what started as a simple moment turns into something you have to re-enter, not just respond to, but manage. And the more time passes, the more that moment expands in your mind, until it no longer feels small at all. So maybe you're not avoiding people. Maybe you're trying to respond without creating friction, without being misunderstood, without opening something that feels harder than it should. But in trying to get it right, you end up not responding at all. And what started as awareness turns into silence. So the question isn't why you avoid replying. It's, when did something simple start feeling like something that needs to be controlled? And whether that control is actually helping you or quietly keeping you from showing up at all. Because not every response needs to be perfect to be real. And not every moment needs to be managed to be safe. If this feels familiar, there are deeper patterns behind it. If this kind of content resonates, consider subscribing and share it with someone who might be going through this quietly.